Welcome to Wonderland, the podcast where I go down the rabbit hole to research things you may be curious about. My name is Amii, and I'll be your guide on this trip to Wonderland. Hi there, my Wonderlings, and welcome back. It's definitely summer here in South Carolina, and I like to spend a lot of it outdoors, even in this heat. One of my goals when I retire, in many years, is to visit every national park in the United States. I love being outdoors, and being in nature melts stress and anxiety and worries away and provides me with a sort of zenness. And as entranced as I am about the idea of visiting all of the national parks, I also found myself wondering what makes a national park, well, a national park.
I wonder.
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 So, what is a national park?
A national park is a space of land that's been purchased by the United States in order to establish a recreational or tourist area that is also designated to secure that space so that it's not used for resources and other things that could damage it.
It's a park that exists in a state that's that state's national park, and there's multiple national parks across all the states.
Like the actual definition of it? Oh, it's I would say it's federally granted land specifically for the conservation of the ecosystem and the enjoyment of the people to view nature.
Are there national parks in Canada?
Yes.
Oh, man. I changed my first answer.
Go ahead.
National parks are parks or parts of nature that are open. Well, most of them are open to all of the nations.
I guess an area of land that is going to be protected by the federal government to keep people from messing it up and to retain its natural state.
It is a government-protected sanctuary of sorts.
National Park is a conservation of land that was appropriated by the United States government for public use, and the government pays for its upkeep.
I would say it's designated land that the government has set aside to preserve in different states and areas, and they're really pretty.
It's land that has been designated for conservation and for the American people, and they have them in other countries also, to enjoy and take care of it.
A national park is an area set aside by a national government for preservation, usually of the natural environment, but also for historical or scientific purposes. In the United States and Canada, focus is usually on the protection of land and wildlife. In the United Kingdom, the focus is predominantly on the land, and in Africa, the primary focus is on animal conservation. Other countries with large national parks include Brazil, Japan, India, and Australia. We'll sprinkle in some fun information about national parks outside of the United States, but for our purpose today, we're going to be talking mostly about national parks in the U.S. Some areas being preserved by the government are national parks, and some are state parks. So what is the difference between a state park and a national park?
Just who is in charge of it, so the United States government or the states themselves, making sure that those areas are taken care of.
I guess one is for the USA and one's for within a state, and the state takes care of the one that's in the state.
I guess it would come down to what government is overseeing it, whether it's the local state government or the federal government. I don't know what differences they would do within each park, but I think it would just be which government's in charge of it.
Okay, a national park is paid for by the United States federal government, and state parks are funded by the state governments.
National's federally protected and state is state protected and ran.
The state park is special to that specific state, and those people who go to that state go to see other stuff, and they might go to the state park.
State parks are generally mostly designed for tourism and recreation. they aren't always designed to protect the land that they have invested in.
Who runs it, or who's in charge of it, technically. So to me, a national park is at the federal level versus a state park being at the state level. So they can exist together, they can overlap, whatever, as long as they're okay. But that, to me, is a difference of who's in charge.
Mostly, this comes down to ownership, land use, and governance. Virginia Wesleyan University explains that all federal public lands are owned by U.S. taxpayers whose money goes towards preserving them. That means every taxpayer has a right to be there and a say in how the lands can be used. State parks are controlled by state governments and are required to generate funding. Resident taxpayers have less control over how these parks are handled. National parks cannot be sold without taxpayer approval, but state parks can be sold to make up budget deficits if the state government deems it necessary. State parks are under jurisdiction of state and local officials, whereas national parks fall under the National Park Service and the U.S. Department of the Interior. When do you think the first national park was named? What park was it?
1987. How off was I?
A lot.
Earlier? Or
Yes.
1950? Higher or lower?
We're not going to play high-low.
Please, just one.
Lower.
19...
Lower.
What? 18? 17?
No, 18-something.
1843.
Which park do you think it is?
The one in South Carolina?
We only have one.
Yeah.
Congaree? You thought Congaree National Park is the first national park in the entire United States?
What's Congaree?
Or is our national park that we have?
Oh, so I was right about the first one? Was it in Texas?
No.
New York?
No.
On the coast?
No.
Mississippi?
No.
Like, where on the map? Midwest?
Midwest, maybe. A little wester than Midwest.
So on the coast?
No, not that far west.
Iowa?
No.
So Yosemite was the first national park, I think, and it was Theodore Roosevelt that wound up being the one that fought to get it really, really hard. So late 1800s.
The first national park named? Oh, wasn't it like the second Adams? That was early, like the early 1800s, I would have said. I have no clue what it would have been named.
I want to say Yellowstone, but I know it was Teddy Roosevelt who started it. National Park Service. Hopefully I'm right.
Ooh, maybe like Yellowstone. Like, that's probably the biggest one. Maybe not. I feel like I have researched this before. But I'm like, I know a lot about national parks in Utah specifically, but I would say early 1900s. But I have no clue.
Goodness gracious. I think it may have been in California. Oh, Redwood Forest. I can't remember the name of it. Oh, where all the geysers are. I can't think of it now. I'm not sure if that's the first one or not. But I think it was Roosevelt that set aside the first park. I'm not sure. I shouldn't answer that.
National park, I'm not sure. State park, I learned recently, was Niagara Falls in the late 1800s. National park, maybe Grand Canyon or maybe Yellowstone, probably somewhere around the same time, 1870s, 1880s.
1872, and it was Yellowstone.
Again, I'm going to talk about this in relation to the United States, so the answer I'm giving is Yellowstone National Park in 1872. Though if we broaden our rabbit hole a bit, Tobago Main Ridge Forest Reserve in what is now Trinidad and Tobago was established in 1776, and the Badkhan Ul Mountain in Mongolia was restricted from cultivation in 1778, making these two the oldest legally protected areas. But since we're focusing on the United States park system, we're going to talk about Yellowstone. The Library of Congress explains that the Yellowstone area was one of the last unexplored regions in the contiguous United States when Ferdinand Vanderveer Hayden led an expedition to the area in 1871. With a $40,000 appropriation from Congress and a team of 34 men and 7 wagons, Hayden set out. His group included a mineralogist, a topographer, 2 artists, and a photographer. The artist and the photographer in particular provided dramatic and effective testimonials in favor of establishing the park. In addition to the art, Hayden himself provided a 500-page report detailing their findings. He bent the ear of senators, congressmen, and anyone with authority in an attempt to have the land protected. And in December 1871, a bill was introduced simultaneously in the House and the Senate to establish a park at Yellowstone River. The bills passed in early 1872, and on March 1st, President Grant signed into law the Yellowstone National Park Protection Act that says, quote, "The headwaters of the Yellowstone River is hereby reserved and withdrawn from settlement, occupancy, or sale, and dedicated and set apart as a public park or pleasure group for the benefit and enjoyment of the people." While Yellowstone is widely accepted as the first national park, if not in name, in practice. But others contend that Hot Springs in Arkansas is the first national park, as it was set aside 40 years before Yellowstone in 1832. Technically, it is the nation's oldest national reservation, which was set aside to preserve and distribute a utilitarian resource, hot water in this instance, similarly to our present-day national forests. It was a 1921 act of Congress that deemed Hot Springs a national park. Even Yosemite was a park before Yellowstone, but it was a state park. Congress was disappointed with the results of the state park, and in 1890, they made Yellowstone a national park. The first area to use national park and its creation legislation in the United States was Mackinac National Park in 1875. And technically, Mackinac is no longer a national park because the area was transferred to the state of Michigan's authority in 1895 as their first state park. What do you know about the National Park Service?
They do a lot of different things, both in advertising the national parks themselves, because visiting them is how they sometimes, generate revenue through donations. But they're also in charge of the ecological preservation of them to ensure that things like, tree disease and all that get handled properly, the proper clear cutting of forests and all that, as well as maintaining proper wildlife balance in there to make sure that anybody that goes on there for any sort of hunting or fishing or anything doesn't do anything to disrupt the proper population.
They bring back the wildlife and preserve the nature.
That it is federal employees that work those particular parks and land to protect them and keep safe for people to visit.
Not much. I know they do the park rangers and employ everybody who works there and set all the rules and times you can go and protect the animals within it.
I know they're there.
Okay.
And they take care of things.
I think it was appropriated by the agricultural, and I forget what the other parts of the government, the United States government, are that appropriated the lands and the money to fund them. But I know it had something to do with something about agriculture.
I guess nothing for sure. I guess they would just be the ones in charge of maintaining the area, making sure any invasive species don't get in, the species population stays where it needs to be, and maintaining the safety of any of the natural features and making sure humans don't mess it up.
Interestingly, despite national parks being founded in the 1800s, the National Park Service wasn't established until Congress passed the National Park Service Organic Act, which President Woodrow Wilson signed into effect on August 25, 1916. According to the Department of the Interior, the Organic Act directs the National Park Service to promote and regulate the use of the parks by whatever means and measures conform to the fundamental purpose of the parks. The fundamental purpose is to conserve the scenery and natural and historic objects and wildlife therein, to provide for their enjoyment in such a manner and by such means that it will leave them unimpaired for the enjoyment of future generations. How many national parks do you think there are today?
More than 40, maybe less than 70.
51.
Hundreds.
51.
Oh, I have no idea. Maybe 3,000 or so.
Oh, jeepers, I don't know. Maybe in the 50s were the ones that are in the U.S.
I don't know the exact number. Maybe around 50.
Is it in maybe the 60s or 70s? I think. I don't know. I've probably been to 30 or 40 of them.
At the inception of the NPS, there were 14 national parks and 2 reservations. Today, the National Park Service is responsible for 424 units covering more than 85 million acres in all 50 states. Some of these are national monuments, historic sites, and national memorials. There are 63 national parks in the United States currently. I won't name all 63, but they range from well-known ones like Arcadia in Maine to Grand Canyon in Arizona to Glacier in Montana to even Congaree here in South Carolina, one of only 2 places you can witness synchronized fireflies. Which national parks have you visited?
I'm not sure I've visited any national. I visited states.
If national forests are considered national parks, then the Cherokee National Forest, the Chattahoochee National Forest in North Georgia is the only one that I can think of.
I don't think I've ever been to one.
Not even Congaree?
I don't think so.
Great Smoky Mountains?
Maybe. I'm not cognizantly aware that I visited it, if I did.
I don't know that I visited any national parks. A few state parks throughout the country, but national, I don't think any.
Couple. I know there's one like up that starts with the Appalachia. I've been to that one. And then over in like, once you start getting to like, where is it? Like over kind of where Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. I think there's someone over in that way. Same thing because I had family living over there. But most of what I go to is state parks.
Same. Have you gone to Congaree?
Yes.
That's a national park.
That's a national park? I didn't realize that. I thought that was a state one.
Yellowstone.
You have not. Don't be a liar. It's only one. You've only visited one. The one you visited, you have a sticker on your kayak for.
That's a national park.
Mm-hmm.
I never went to Congaree.
No.
Great Smoky Mountains National Park.
Oh. So, Congaree. I've been to Zion, to Capitol Reef National Park, Bryce Canyon National Park. The St. Louis Arch is a national park. I don't know. I guess it's just called St. Louis Arch. Arches National Park. Speaking of arches, and Canyonlands National Park, and then we went to Hot Springs National Park in Arkansas. I think that's it.
Oh my gosh. Congaree National Park here in South Carolina. I've been to Yosemite. I've been to the Grand Canyon. I've been to, is Joshua Tree a national park? I'm not sure if it is, but Joshua Tree, Black Hills, where the Mount Rushmore is, I think it's a national park. National Mall in Washington, D.C., because I think that's a national park too.
You don't have to keep going.
Yeah, there's Glacier National Park. So there, yeah, I can't remember all of them. I used to have they sell badges that you can actually like put down a sleeve that'll indicate every one of them. And I used to have that, but that was 40 years ago, 30 years ago.
That's pretty neat though. I want one of those bottles where you get the sticker for each one you go to.
How do you wash the bottle though? Those stickers are going to come off.
Those are waterproof stickers, like what you put on a car, like vinyl.
Oh, okay. That makes sense then.
While I have big, big dreams of visiting all 63 national parks, to date, I've only visited 2, Congaree National Park and Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Both are beautiful, and being able to be surrounded by natural beauty while development spreads all around you is just surreal. Which parks have you not gotten to, but you'd really like to visit?
I don't know.
I think the biggest ones I'd want to go see would be the Grand Canyon and probably Yellowstone. I think that would be cool.
I want to go to Yellowstone. I flew over Yellowstone in an airplane, and he tilted the plane so we could see how beautiful it was, and it was awesome.
Well, the obvious being Yellowstone. I mean, that'd be cool to get over there and get to. Grand Canyon's considered a national park. That would be another fun one I really want to go to. And then, isn't there some that's up in Alaska too? That's another one I definitely want to go to, but that's also just to see Alaska. So,
No.
Yellowstone, Congaree, Nahanni, Canada, Nahanni Valley, Canada. I don't know what the state parks or the national parks called. Anything in Russia. Is there one in Russia?
I don't know.
I want to go to Russia.
I don't know. I'd have to look at a list of national parks. I don't know. I've been to the Everglades.
What about any of them that aren't in the United States?
Yeah, any national park in Norway is fine.
Oh, so the current list includes Yellowstone, Acadia. What is the one? What's the one where the girl got murdered? Like yeah, by her boyfriend. That one's right next to Yellowstone. So that one as well. But yeah, I have travel plans to go visit those in. Those are in not Montana. They're in Wyoming. So that's the next trip is to Wyoming.
I would like to go to Yosemite. I would like to go down now I can't think of the river. What is the river that you go down? The Colorado. And well, actually, I'd just love to see any of them.
Hello, my name is Shelton Johnston, and I'm a park ranger here in Yosemite National Park. Directly over my shoulder is Yosemite Valley, one of the most iconic landscapes on the face of the earth, and of course, the first preserved natural area in the Western Hemisphere. Yosemite is one of our oldest national parks and one of the most beautiful places in the world, but for me, growing up in inner city Detroit, Yosemite was a very far away place. Far away not just geographically, but culturally as well. Where I grew up, people didn't talk about national parks. No one that I knew visited national parks. It never came up as a topic of conversation. And so I felt that the distance between myself and this kind of landscape was incredibly vast. But now, I've become a ranger, and I realized that that was an illusion, that I was misinformed, that this place is as much a part of me as where I was growing up in Detroit. And to me, it actually is more meaningful. Because this, for me, is America. The national parks are representative of America. And whenever I visit any national park, I feel like I'm coming home. And it's been an interesting journey to go from the inner city of Detroit to the national parks, to places like the Grand Canyon or Zion or Yellowstone or right here in Yosemite. But the journey was well worth it. And I encourage everyone who has ever even considered visiting a national park to work out that wish, that desire, and take it upon yourself to come out here to these places, because you will not regret it. It can change your life, and it will change your life for the better. These are landscapes, these are stories, these are histories that can transform the way you look at the world and your place in that world. And so I highly recommend that you take it upon yourself to bring your children here. And if you're a young person, to encourage your parents to bring you here, because this is something that is not just a place, it is something that you own. It belongs to you, it belongs to all of us, and all you have to do to claim it is to get here and enjoy it, and it's here for everyone to enjoy. So come on out. Thank you.
Well, I want to go to all of them, but tops of my list for sure include Glacier, Yellowstone, and Grand Teton. I honestly couldn't tell you why these first, other than every time I see pictures, I'm just mesmerized by the sheer magnitude and allure of these places. And by the time I get to visit them all, maybe there'll be more. Or maybe I'll visit some of the national parks that are outside the United States, like Bromo Tengger Semeru National Park in Indonesia, which boasts volcanoes surrounded by sandy plains. Or perhaps the striking landscapes of Colli National Park in Finland. Stelvio National Park in Italy is captivating with its mountainscapes, valleys, and lakes. Or the Mystic Bogs and Lahima National Park in Estonia. Or the world's largest national park, Northeast Greenland National Park, which was established in 1974 and is 375,000 square miles. Governments all around the world have deemed preservation of these natural beauties as a matter of national concern, and there are countless reasons to visit any of them. I hope that you get the opportunity to commune with nature in one of these areas that are so special that they are federally protected. Thanks so much for joining me today, and until next time, be safe, be kind, and stay curious. The Welcome to Wonderland podcast is copyrighted by Amii Bland and is part of the Barrett Gruber Entertainment Division. This podcast is recorded at the podcast studio of GOT Sound Studio in Lexington, South Carolina. Any thoughts or opinions expressed as part of this production are those of the host unless otherwise indicated. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Please follow, like, and share this podcast. Find us on Facebook at Welcome to Wonderland the Podcast and on Twitter at Wonderland_pod. To submit corrections, additional information, or requests for episodes, please email the host at welcometowonderlandthepod@gmail.com. Oh, short. Short and sweet. Short and sweet. Short and sweet. Doo 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 doo.